only on the ParaEncounters Network. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Yeah, I'm broadcasting from the beautiful hills of Northern California, and you know my co-host, Tarot Tim, is coming in from Dover, Delaware. Hey, Tim.
Hi, Rebecca. Hey, everybody. Glad y'all joined us.
Yeah, it's good to see you this evening. Thanks for joining me as always. So last week's show was cut short, and that was because producer Eric's dog passed away during the show. So condolences to Eric and to your furry friend. May he journey well.
He has, and thank you very much.
Yeah, good. So, drinking game alert. Anytime either of us says this word, take a sip from your Ace of Cups. Tim doesn't know the word. I know the word, but Tim doesn't. So we'll see. We'll see if I can get you to say it.
Okay.
And you can always follow us on our Facebook page, The Tarot Talk Show. Tweet us at The Tarot Talk Show. And visit our official show website, thetarotalk.com, to catch up on all of our archived shows, guest bios, and everything else we've got going there. So, Tim, how was your week?
It was an interesting week.
I did a reading for you, and it kind of things came to pass. So tell people about
that. I did. Oftentimes after the show goes offline, me and Rebecca will throw cards for each other, and we have our little tarot playground time. And she told me I was going to get something out of left field, and I should use intellect to deal with it and not emotion. And I did exactly the opposite thing at first, and then I pulled my head out of my butt and fixed it. But it was very much a Five of Wands, Five of Cups kind of. That had nothing to do with me personally. It's just other people's issue. And it's been dealt with, and I got the lesson I was supposed to get out of it, I think. So that's a good thing.
Well, I wish I remember what I pulled for you, but I remember that, it was like a couple of the more dramatic theatrical wands that showed up. Five of Wands, I think, was one of them. And then the Eight of Wands Swiftness, which is just out of nowhere. Like, the Eight of Wands is so fast, you don't see it coming, you can't plan for it, you can just kind of hang on for the ride, and the cards that come after it will kind of show you, the nature of what's coming at you, and then how to subsequently deal with it. So, and then the Swords was what I was also getting from that, which is that emotional detachment. Like, you can't be reactive, even though it's going to catch you so off guard out of nowhere. Your first reaction is going to be, Wands pissed, but you can't be reactive. It's that Swords, that mental, okay, let's deal with it, think through it, handle it in a very Swords-like, mature, methodical way, I think another thing that had also come up is, for Swords, I kind of feel like an abundance of Swords in any reading, and it was a short one. It was like just a 3, 4, maybe 5 carder, and half of them were Swords. But, my late mentor in tarot, Robert E. Graham, he used to say that Swords contain words. And so often when there is an abundance of Swords in the reading, it can be words and brutally honest conversation. So things that you don't see coming, words that are very hurtful that you don't see and you have to kind of deal with it. So I tend to get the Swords cards for gossip and arguments and brutally honest conversation, or even news. I know that sometimes the Cups cards are like messenger cards and stand for that emotion, but for me, I see Swords in the reading as messages, news, words, that kind of thing. So, and it stinks, but with the Swords cards, you learn from it, and the illusion's gone. Like, I feel like with the Three of Swords, it will teach you a lot. Same with the Seven of Swords. You really see people's true colors with those cards, because there's no hiding for them anymore. And I think that with Three of Swords, that brutally honest conversation, even though it stings, and even with the Seven of Swords, like, you really find out who your friends are, and some things, I think, are revealed with the sharpness of the Swords. It cuts through.
Well, and I'm very much a Swords kind of person, because I don't usually censor myself, and if you've got an issue or problem, confront it, deal with it, move on.
Right.
But, I had someone who just doesn't deal with problems in that manner, and never did find out what the issue actually was. But because it was in a group setting, and I tried to play nice instead of causing controversy, and have been just going out of my way to be nice and friendly and uplifting for the last 7 months, and then got bit in the butt again on it. So the lesson was not to try and act in a way that's not my core.
Right.
If I stuck with the judgment card and just done what I should have done in the first place, and
end it. Just done with it.
Do what you got to do. Let the chips fall. That would have probably saved me a lot of time.
Sure. But now you know. Yeah, and it's.
Yeah, well, now they've behaved with other people in the way they've been with me, so everyone knows what's going on now, instead of everyone just thinking it's, a personal issue.
Well, yeah, and I think that's with the swords, you get that clarity. Like, it's the situation stinks when you get those swords cards. It's going to be honest. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be painful. People you think are your friends really aren't your friends when there's some swords coming up, and when there's that swords-like conversation, where you have to be honest and things are revealed, and you get the clarity of that, that air element. But you learn a lot from it. You're no longer under illusion. And honestly, people see, the situation for what it really is, too, finally. So that's the good news. When you get, I think, swords in a reading, it's painful, but it's also revealing. And so that's a good thing. I mean, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can
it's like you're taught you're supposed to forgive people and everything, and that whole turn the other cheek. And I said, I only got 2, and that's twice, and it's done. Now it's on. And then they just totally just disappeared and left, and so it's all.
Well, and I think it's
their issue, though.
I think it's challenging, especially when you're out there on a spiritual path and a public spiritual path. You know what I mean? It's a very fine line between being, loving people and being compassionate. But then on the other hand, you don't want to be somebody's doormat. You have to set boundaries. There is that balance. So I think that, you've done a good job, and good for you for being swords, not reactive, but just very methodical and in control. I like it. I wanted to share with you, this is going to make you laugh. I'm cleaning out my stuff, going through my stuff. Have you heard of Stuart Wilde? Stuart Wilde? He's, I don't know how to describe him. He's like a new age philosopher, but with a twist. He's not like a love and lighter, really. He's funny. He's almost like if Dave Barry meets new age, something Carl Hyacin meets new agey kind of stuff. Okay, anyway. And I think he's since, I don't know if I want to say that. I'm not sure he's still alive. Maybe. I'm not sure. Anyway, he's pretty funny. So I got this quote, and I had postmarked it or stickied it years ago when I read it, and I just now am revisiting it. But it's so funny. So speaking of swords, this to me is like a very swords-like quote. So he writes, on maintaining your philosophy. This is Stuart Wilde from his book, The Secrets of Life. If people say to you, I think your philosophy is the pits, you say, well, thank you, I appreciate you sharing your opinion. Then if they say, I think that what you believe is stupid, and you're dumb, and you're not righteous, and you're not going to get to heaven, and you're going to have a lousy time, you say, thank you for your opinion, it helps me concentrate. I particularly like the way that the cockroach walked around your coffee cup while you were talking about my life. And what threw me into a state of ecstasy was when the cockroach stopped, looked up at me, winked, and then urinated in your coffee. I loved it. I totally loved it. I think that's funny. And I think that's very swords-like, sticking to your guns, no matter what people say, and even finding, the humor in the situation. So I really, I like that. That kind of spoke to me. So I also wanted to share that with you. And yeah, I think humor is very swords-like, I think. Because comedians are some of the smartest people, or at least the ones I know, that are... can really, really pull it out. Anyway, so I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, I think you're right about the comedians. George Carlin was the master of the swords, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're observant, too. They have that swords-like perception. Yeah, they're able to just kind of cut to the heart of the matter, really see things and people for what they are. Yeah, they're so good. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to share that. Oh, body image. That's one of the things that I actually meant to talk about last week. And because Eric had asked the question in the chat room, what card represents body issues or problem with that someone would have with that. So what's your opinion on this? Is there a card that comes to mind for you?
Well, you know, it depends on where you're at with your body issues, because so many people have issues. Personally, I used to be huge. I was like over 300 pounds. I'm like 209 right now. And it's you do a lot of self-betrayal when you're in that. So, you got a lot of like the 9 and 10 of swords you're doing to yourself.
Right.
You know? And I think a lot of 5s.
Okay.
And 4 of cups for people that aren't happy with their body but aren't willing to get off their ass and do something about it. You know? Because you pay for the gym membership every month, but you've never actually went into the gym. But then you're like, why am I not losing weight? As you're, watching the exercise videos, eating the tub of ice cream. Yeah.
Okay.
Very much something you need to get off and be proactive in your life.
Right.
You need to bring judgment and temperance to it. Put some of those majors to work in your life.
Make that decision. Right. Make the decision. Make things happen. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I was thinking that it could be, the devil comes to mind when you're bound by your stuff. I've brought up the devil card in my own life and how I've drawn a correlation between like my stuff that's inside of that black box the devil sits on, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's, body image, that's your stuff. That's whatever it is that you are chained to. And I think that, your stuff, that your trauma, really, whatever you've been through.
Yeah. And a lot of it, I think, is 3 of Swords. It's crap that happened long ago that keeps you chained to that.
Right.
Because for a lot of people, like, I don't know, food is, you do a good job, here's a treat. Oh, you're a good kid, here's a treat. Oh, you lost someone, everyone in the neighborhood brings food and, let's eat to dull the pain.
Sure.
So for people that don't have an outlet or any positive way of dealing with things, sometimes food becomes a friend because it's always there for you. For me, I felt so bad emotionally and spiritually and stuff that I would eat till I made my body feel as bad as my soul.
Yeah.
Because it's, you would eat so much you would have stomach aches and, couldn't get out of bed, just lay there, and it's really hard to deal with.
Right. Yeah. I can't imagine. And I feel like, I think in terms of the major arcana, the devil comes to mind because you're chained to that box of pain, your box of stuff. And you have to find a way out of that. Also, perhaps the star. The star comes to mind. The star is a very peaceful, beautiful card, but I also feel like if you want to take it literally, which sometimes, as we know, the tarot can be very literal. So if you're talking about body image, here you have the naked image of, the body and everything. It's like very vulnerable. I think the star can represent that vulnerability and the need for healing. What are you feeding even? I'm thinking of just the traditional symbolism as she's kneeling by the stream, pouring the water in, the emotion, the psyche, just everything that water represents, and that pain, that need for healing. Yeah. So, yeah, I think so I would say, star, devil, but I also like what you had to say about the fives, the loss of the fives, the pain and disappointment of the fives in this reading.
I think even like the Nine of Wands, because that's also dealing with shutting yourself off from everyone else, and then, food is the friend that's always there, and...
Well, and I think that there's, even with the wands, it's so fiery that I think shame is a good word for, the Nine of Wands.
Well, yeah, and that would be the person who has, who doesn't eat in front of other people, but they know every drive-through on their route to work or whatever, or they have a hidden stash that no one knows about, and they eat when everyone else is in bed, because it is very shameful.
Right. Right.
I think temperance when you're out of balance.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was like it went over to the darker side, because it really, for a lot of people, it's an addiction.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be overeating. That could also go for anorexia, for bulimia.
Absolutely. Or any body.
Yeah, it's just not loving yourself, It's like you just got to love yourself wherever you're at on your journey, and it's okay to want to change and to improve yourself, but you got to live in the now also. Mm-hmm. And, don't beat yourself up so much for stuff, and then that just makes you feel bad, and then what do? You go and do it again.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I appreciate you sharing your, the challenges that you had with your body image. How I guess, what was the tipping point for you? This is the first part of my question. And then how did spirituality or even tarot help you out of this?
And actually, this is so funny. I saw a picture of myself, and I just found this the other day, and I actually had shared it with someone at work, that horrified me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw the picture on your Facebook. Yeah. Oh, look at your puppy.
Okay. I was huge. But I knew I was big, but I didn't know I was big. And I saw that, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not that fat. And a friend of mine said, yes, you are.
Your swords-like friend, or even your wands friend, is like, yeah, you are. Very honest. Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, oh no. And I went on Atkins, and, and it was, I was never fat when I was a child. When I was like 8 years old, my mom died, and it was my whole world. And emotionally, it was not a good time. My dad, he was a good man, but he was very distant, so I really didn't have anybody. And you're talking, back in the 70s, so there wasn't going to be therapy and, groups and anything to help you.
Well, and people just know. Like, they just didn't, you know what I mean? Like, they just didn't know. Like, yeah, anyway, go ahead.
And then, I lived with my dad, and then 2 years later, he passed away. And then I went to live with my grandparents, who, my grandfather was an alcoholic, and my grandmother was, just emotionally not able to deal with it. And she had lost both of her children and had like 5 grandkids to raise. And, I was just kind of left out there floundering, and it took me a long time to figure out, to pull my head out of my ass and do something about it. I was like 22 when I started doing the spiritual thing, but I played at it for a lot of years, because we start the journey and we doubt and stuff. And especially, I grew up, I never really heard about tarot cards or anything. I fell into this totally by accident.
I know, haven't we all?
A lady that worked, I was managing Texaco, and a lady that worked for me saw an ad and said, "Oh, yeah, I've always wanted to learn tarot. Let's go to a class." And so we went to a class. And the first class, I was so irritated because the lady teaching the class, I mean, from the get-go, was just throwing cards. We were all sitting in a big circle, throwing cards at me and saying, "What does this mean?" And I'm like, "I don't know. It looks like this to me." And she wasn't doing that to anyone else. And after the class, because I'm not, shy, so why in the hell were you picking on me for the whole class? And she just laughed at me. She's like, "I wasn't picking on you. You already know the tarot. You just don't remember it yet."
Right. And I think that's funny because as readers, or a lot of readers, I think, we all have a story like that where we're called out by another reader and we're like, "But me?" Like, yeah, right.
And my friend actually hated the class, never went back, and I wound up finishing the class, working at her shop, doing, readings part-time, and then went and took herbalism and became a Reiki master, and it opened up a whole door, and I've been really lucky. I mean, I got to do a workshop with Ted Andrews before he passed away. I've seen Sylvia Brown, I've seen John Edward a couple of times. It's like I keep... It just kept being in my life until I finally started, taking it seriously a couple of years ago. And
so you feel like so you feel like your spirituality really helped you heal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives you a lot of insight, because there was a lot of anger.
Oh, yeah.
My first psychic reading, the lady said, "You've got anger and separation issues." And I'm like looking at her, and she's like, "And I'm not even talking about when your parents died." She's like, "I'm talking about you were a Tibetan monk in a past life, and your monastery was attacked, and you were the last one to die, and you turned your back on God because how could he let this happen when y'all were so devout?" And it went into this whole Tibetan thing, and it was really freaking me out because I actually had rescued a Tibetan spaniel, had no clue what that was, which was the temple dogs, and I had all this. A friend had just called me on the spur of the moment and said, "I've got these tickets," and it wound up being the monks that did the music for 7 years in Tibet and Kundan were doing a Richard Gere tour of America to raise money for Save Tibet, and it was like all the stuff was happening around me, and it was interesting. That definitely opened a floodgate. Then I started remembering that I had a little spaniel in that lifetime. I remembered after that. I kept dreaming about her. And it's funny, in dreams, I knew her name was Honey, but it wasn't. It was like the Tibetan word for that. And in my dreams, I knew the word, but when I'd wake up, I couldn't figure the word out. Yeah. It's funny how we speak all languages in dreams.
We do. Yeah, absolutely. Well, because the dream transcends any, time and space that we're in right now. Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think most of us have, if not all, I think everybody has body issues. It's difficult for me to relate to people who have food and weight issues, for lack of a better word, because I've never struggled with that myself, but my body issue has always been, or my self issue or whatever, has definitely been the color of my skin and what I looked like when I looked in the mirror. So, which I think is funny because I think a lot of people, they assume I wouldn't have had any of that, you know what I mean? Like, what would I know about body image and pain or whatever? But growing up the way I did, adopted, nobody looked like me, for starters. You know what I mean? Like, everybody, it was like very white bread, and I was the only dark-skinned, dark-haired, dark-eyed girl in school. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Like, I'm totally serious. And then, my brother's adopted also. So, but he was the other person I knew. So it was like the two of us and everybody else, just the way that we grew up. So, I grew up feeling, very different and very ugly even, because back in the what was this, like the mid to late 80s, we didn't have J-Lo and Selena Gomez or whoever, like all of these really lovely Hispanic women and young role models or whatever. The idea of beauty that was constantly presented to me was, very blonde and blue-eyed and white. So it's definitely been a process for me just growing whole and accepting myself and what I look like. And so I understand to a certain extent, everybody's pain is different, but yeah, I understand, feeling different. And I understand, the shame that comes when you look at yourself in the mirror. I get it. So it's a very long process, this growing whole. And I do feel that, tarot and spirituality, of course, always leads the way, and it gives you this touchstone. That's, I think, the word that's coming to mind. Touchstone, capstone even, tether, something like that, to focus on, because that's one of the great things that you can use tarot for, is to draw a card. What do I need to know about my stuff, or about my healing, or what do I need to focus on, and that kind of thing. And so tarot points the way. So that's great. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I wanted to cover the body image thing. I've been meaning to do that the last couple weeks. So yeah, I'm glad that we talked about that, for sure.
Yeah, and honestly, for everybody, the thing is, just don't sit on those feelings, don't internalize it all. Talk to someone. I don't care who you talk to. If you can't talk to someone, journal it, write it down, get it out. Because all those feelings, they kind of fester if you don't do something. And, and a lot of times, we will take all that anger and angst and everything, especially in body stuff, and people will turn it against other people. How many times you heard people say, oh, F that skinny bitch, da-da-da-da-da. Okay. She may be someone who, she's got her own issues. You don't know what she's dealing with.
Well, yeah, she's probably getting ragged on because she's too skinny. Like, my best friend in the whole wide world is a little toothpick, and people are always picking on her. Why don't you eat a sandwich? Do you have to jump around in the shower to get wet? Like, mean stuff, And she's like, that hurts me, because I do eat. This is just what I look like, So you're right. They do that. Yeah.
If you go to the gym and you're wearing dental floss in your butt, then you're kind of asking to be made fun of. But it's just keep a sense of humor and smile. Love yourself. That's all. You really have to.
And I like what you had to say about just writing it out or talking to somebody. That's very swords-like. Swords, contain words, and I often see the swords cards as the antidote to the deep emotion of the cups cards, the deep fog of the cups cards, the psyche, like all that deep subconscious pain and trauma. The swords really cuts through that and really brings it up to the surface, because it can be stuck pretty deep. So yeah, I agree. Let it all out.
Well, that's why Weight Watchers is so popular. It's not even that the plan is anything revolutionary. It's not. It's the meetings.
Right. The communication, the swords like also.
There's this whole room of people that understand when maybe your husband or your wife or your kids, because, your family can be the cruelest.
Sure.
You don't even realize, especially when people you love say something negative about you, you really take that to heart.
Well, especially with this family or close friends, like people that you really, you're emotionally invested in them. And so it's even more dramatic, Yeah.
And just kind of beyond that, but it goes with that. Love yourself, no matter what the situation is. Do not stay in a situation where you're being abused. Please, get out. And it's not going to get better, and it's not going to change. The first time someone lays hands on you, male or female, they're not the person for you, and they've got issues that are only going to get worse. So, yeah, run.
Right. Well, and we've even advised this in readings, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes you do see it in the cards, and you just feel it intuitively. but yeah, this is the situation, and absolutely, and I think that's also helpful at that point as a reader to really have resources, I guess, available for them on hand. I've done that before. They have, free will. What they do with it, unless I mean, it opens up a whole can of issues. I mean, if there's minors involved or whatever, I mean, that's a different responsibility. But if it's a grown person in front of you, like they have free will, to stay or go or whatever. But I feel like it is responsible to communicate that message strongly and to have those resources available to them.
As readers, we really are, and I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks this and has this insight, but, we'll share it anyway. We're like psychic CSIs. We see people on the worst day of their lives. Because that's usually, no one, oh, I'm so happy, I need a reading. Let's go see if I'm going to be happier.
Right.
That's not what usually happens. It's usually when there's turmoil and trauma and they don't know. Or they know and they just need a third person to say, look.
Sure. A sounding board, an objective, sounding board, absolutely. I mean, which is why I've gone to readers before too, is because I need, like a third opinion. And
well, it's really hard to read for yourself because, when I'm reading for someone else, I try to throw all my judgments and my junk out of the way. But, when you're reading for yourself, it's like, oh, no, that's not me. What are the cards talking about?
Or, oh, I don't like that. I'm going to pick another card. Like, that's what I've done before. Like, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 5, whatever. Yeah.
I have been there and done that for sure.
For sure, yeah. Well, yeah, people do come to us with their stuff. And I think, for some people, it's more comfortable for them than what they perceive to be a sterile environment in a therapy office or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, they're just more comfortable coming for reading, and that's when there's that opportunity to really dig deep and give them some perspective and guidance and a new way of looking at things. And plus you have tarot is that pictorial representation of that energy, and since sight is our primary sense visually, we really respond to those pictures, to those symbols. It really touches something, I feel, deep and primal within us. I'm a huge advocate of therapy, of course, but I feel like also in a way the tarot reading, when it's used in this way, can really pull some things up just by using those images that you might not get just by talking and alone, verbalizing it alone. Well, and I think I've always kind of joked that it's funny that people seek out, like me as a reader, because here I am reading pieces of paper, and so they're going to know that I don't think they're crazy, because who's crazier than I am, I'm reading like these pieces of paper, so they know right away that they're not as nuts as I am, so whatever it is they have to say or share with me, I'm cool with. So I think that the funny part is that kind of sets that precedent for, that they feel comfortable, because who's more nuts than I am,
Well, hey guys, I've got a question, an inexperienced reader for 2 more experienced readers.
Sure.
Okay.
How do you deal with an ask hole? an ask hole being somebody that constantly asks for advice, and you give them advice and they constantly don't take it.
And they don't take it. Well, see, we're in 2 different schools of thought, because the Cancer in me feels bad, and I'm like, oh, I just feel bad for this person. But Tim is like, go ahead, Tim. I'll let Tim take this one.
Perfect example, reading I had a couple weeks ago. When I'm reading, honestly, I'm open and I'm channeling stuff. And if you come back to me 6 months later and say, oh, well, you said blah, blah, blah in the reading, I don't remember the actual cards that I pulled for you and exactly what I said. I can get a general overall feel of the reading, but started doing was a repeat, and I'm doing it, and I'm like, who is this crazy person that's in your life? And it's like, this is nuts, and it's really bad, chaos, lies. And she's like, oh, well, the last time I was in, you told me that I was going to meet this guy and to run like hell, that he was wombat crazy. But he seemed really nice, and so I want to know if it's going to work out. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because it was like, the Lovers, the devil, the tower. And I'm like, oh, honey. You know?
Yeah, we've all had those clients, and I think that it's... I think at some point you have to draw boundaries with them, because after a certain point, the reading, it's not doing any good. Like, I've had, not very often, I will say. I mean, I've been, fortunate to have great clients, but there's been at least, I would say 2, where it's gotten to the point where, they don't take the advice, or they're not open to it, or whatever. You know what I mean? I guess that they just, I'm not sure what they want. I don't want to speak for them, but, it gets to the point where, yeah, they keep asking the same stuff, and at that point also, because they're not doing the work, the cards aren't changing. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're still reflecting the same circumstance and the same stuff, and so it gets to the point where, 2-3 separate readings down the line, I could keep reading for them and taking their money, but it's not doing them any good. It's not doing me any good. And at also, what point is it still right for me to take that money and to do this when nothing's changing, So, yeah, I think, you have to draw boundaries, I think, with some clients.
I have a client who I will not read more than every 6 months.
Sure.
Because when I first started at the shop I'm at, she would call and try and schedule a reading every week. And, I mean, I don't take the appointment, so I don't necessarily know who I'm going to see until I walk in. And it was like the second week when they're back, and I'm like looking at her like, what's she doing back? We read like 8 months into the future for you.
Right, you got to give this time to play out. Yeah.
And then, so it was all the same stuff. And then she tried to make a third appointment, and I said, no, do not take an appointment from her. I was like, because I told her, come back in 6 months. You got to, it's like you got to let it marinate a little bit and see what's happening, and, Cause,
yeah, I feel like it's definitely a case-by-case basis, and I feel like as a reader, you have to intuitively sense which ones are truly not open to advice. But see, the thing, though, is that they're still there. They're still coming to you, so a piece of them still wants to learn, is still open. So, at the same time, I do feel like that's worth something. And I have had, I can think of one client. It took a few readings, but I stuck with her because I feel like, well, I really felt like, she's in there. she's pretty deep, but she's in there, And we did have an aha moment. We really did. And I haven't read for her since then, so maybe that, fixed the problem. But in that sense, 4 or 5 sessions. But I feel like it's definitely something that as a reader, like, you'll just kind of know, I think, whether to keep...
I'm not saying to refuse clients, definitely, if you think you're helping and stuff. But you also, it becomes a point when you don't want to take advantage of them. Because then that's your karma.
Oh, no, I totally agree. That's what I was saying. At one point when they don't, when it's not doing anybody any good, yeah, you could keep seeing them, keep taking the money. You could read for them every week, of course, but that's not, ethical, I don't think. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I don't know, I think it's case by case kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that it's a very clear line for most people who are honorable, but then you do have, I always say I'm an open-minded skeptic. Uh-huh. Go in with an open mind and listen, but if someone is encouraging you to spend a lot of money with them and to come back and I can cleanse your aura for this amount and do this and do that and do the other thing, it's just use some common sense.
Right. Well, and we've used that also on
desperate people are just they're drowning, they're grasping for a lifeline, and you want to help them, but don't let someone unscrupulous take advantage of you.
Well, we've discussed that also on this show. That anybody who's asking you for thousands of dollars is not legitimate. Like they are not. They are not. We know we've had the privilege of having some very gifted readers and healers, magicians, witches. We've had everybody on the show. It seems like a variety of people. Anyway, is what I mean. We've had a wide variety of very prolific people, and none of them would ever ask anyone for thousands of dollars for their gifts. There's no way. There's no way, Yeah.
Well, it's like, as far as me, the universe has given me a lot of really wonderful experiences and talents, and I'm a Reiki master, and a lot of people charge for Reiki. I don't. I made a deal with Spirit that I'll give that away freely as a payback, pay it forward kind of thing for everything you've given me. I don't discount the people that take money, but for me, I just can't do it for physical healing,
How do you make the distinction between Reiki and tarot? Because it's both an exchange of energy. I'm just curious.
They do overlap.
Uh-huh.
They really do. I use Reiki on my cards all the time. I call in Reiki because it really opens me to the universe, and I get information when I open up like that.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess sometimes if you're just specifically doing Reiki, that's just... it's much more focused on the physical plane as far as you're focusing on a specific, on their, their liver or their back or whatever.
Okay. No, I'm just curious what distinction you made, because I know that you charge for your readings, but not your Reiki. So I was just curious how that works. Okay.
That's one of the, it's semantics. That's just my imaginary line, I guess.
Well, that's fine. I was just purely curious.
Yeah, no. It's actually it's completely opposite from what my teacher told me. So because what they noticed, and that is true with tarot also. Dr. Asui, who is the one who rediscovered Reiki, he was treating like the homeless and the beggars and stuff, and giving them healing and wellness and stuff. But he noticed the same people were coming back over and over and over again. Because it wasn't an exchange of energy, that it was just him giving. And that a lot of people hang on to their dis-ease because that's what kind of sets them apart and makes them special.
Sure.
So, that also can happen in readings for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can see it.
Yeah, like I said, you kind of just... it's like we're surfing the psychic wave, and we just kind of have to ride it the best we can and use our intuition and whenever anything comes up.
Absolutely. Well, and this is an interesting question that came up in the Tarot Professionals Forum, so I wanted to get your opinion on it. I definitely gave my 2 cents on this. This is the Facebook page, actually, the Tarot Professionals Facebook page. And the question was, if you were booked to do a reading for a party, and the people who hired you, they asked you to take out the death card, the devil card, the scary cards in the tarot, would you do it? Would you accept the assignment, or would you do it? And I think another important piece of this question was that the party was for high school graduates. So we're talking kids, teens, late teens, basically. They're graduating from high school. They're entering the real adult world. We're reading for this party. Would you take the cards out? Would you take the assignment? I said, no, I would not take these cards out of the deck. And 2, if it was like the issue was pressed, I would tear down the assignment, because I feel like if the hosts, if this is what they want me to do, then they either don't understand what tarot is and what tarot can do, and if they do understand, then they just don't trust me as a reader. At least that was my feeling on this. what's your 2 cents? Because you got reading for minors here, and then you have taking the cards out of the deck, which is another issue.
Yeah, and see, I'm that lovely Gemini who instantly, automatically, always sees both sides of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's really 2 separate issues because the one is, you know, them trusting you or whatever. As far as you could take out whatever cards you want to take out, and I'm going to get the same messages because
I could agree with that. If it needs to be heard or said,
it's going to come out.
Yeah.
I can even well, and you know, I don't personally read reversals, but a lot of people do. So you know, a great happy card in reverse could mean something dark.
Sure.
I don't necessarily always go with the traditional meanings because I use my intuition. So, as far as the information and stuff, I wouldn't have a problem reading for the age group or giving the information. I would definitely have to play it by ear. I'm not going to say outright no, but I would definitely have to have a long discussion with the people about tarot and what tarot is and why are you wanting to do this, you know, because if you're wanting me to read every child as, oh, you're going to get accepted to Harvard and you're going to be a doctor and life's going to be peachy, that's not what tarot is. And parties they're fraught with kind of for me because, you know, they tend to come up together and hover and, you know, it's like, yeah, back off because you don't need to hear this because it's personal.
Right.
Just because you're in a party setting doesn't mean your dark secret isn't going to pop out.
Well, and the crazy part is when it does, and Amy Blackthorne, who we had on the show, we were doing Blog Talk Radio, she has a great party story where that happened, and it was like the fly in the punch bowl thing, but she had to say it, you know what I mean? I mean, it came out, she had to, you know, so, but anyway, yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, just because, that's why party work, I think, it's a whole different animal, especially when people are, like, watching. And I tell people that tarot reading, even at a party, is not a spectator sport, you know, it's really not. Because, yeah, you can get interesting things come up and interesting dynamics between the people.
Under the high school thing, you wouldn't have, you know, the normal, which is the alcohol that's involved at a lot of parties. And people that aren't completely clear mind may not actually hear what you're saying.
Right.
Because their filters are going to make it something else.
Right. Well, and I feel that, I mean, even when reading for minors, I mean, they're older minors, I feel like there's a big difference between a 13-year-old versus a 17, 18 year old. I think there's a big difference there. You know, these kids are, you know, they're entering the real world. They need real world advice, and perhaps they need, you know, the cosmic clue by 4 that is indicated by the death, the devil, the tower, you know, card. These are valuable cards. Like, when it comes up, maybe you should reconsider your shady business, whatever that may be. Maybe you need to put the stuff in line. Maybe you could, you know, like, take a look at your stuff. What is that about? You know, explore it. It starts a dialogue and a valuable conversation that for me anyway, I know you felt like you could get the message regardless, but I feel like for me, you know, if all I'm pulling is, I don't know, like the Ace of Cups and the Sun and the Lovers and the Wheel of Fortune, whatever, I feel like those conversations that are needed might not happen without, you know, those cards. And that's, you know, you have the light and the dark, light and shadow. I mean, it works together.
That's the other thing. I would have to use my intuition in that situation, because if I was sensing from spirit that there's someone there who needs for you to read for them,
yeah,
you know, then that might overrule my instinctive, you know, first gut. No, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Sometimes we automatically say no or whatever, and you know, then we get the spiritual 2x4 because it's like, oh yes, you will. If you don't do it now, then you're going to get this, and this, and you know. much easier.
Well, and I feel like people, you know, I mean, asking me to take cards out of the tarot deck and read with it. I mean, that's like telling me to drive a car that's missing the rear wheels. Like, what, you know? Yeah, tarot's a system. It's a language. It's like trying to give a speech without some of your vowels, you know? I mean, like, I personally would not do it, I think is like the bottom line.
Maybe that's why I don't have a problem with it. I'm Southern. I don't use G's anyway.
You're funny.
I'm used to dropping stuff.
Yeah. Oh, funny. But you know, I don't know. Have you read for little kids before? Like really, like tiny, like 7, 8. You know, they're a lot of fun. And I will say that when I do that, I don't use adult tarot. You know, I'll use something a lot softer, maybe like the oracle cards or the astro dice. That's always fun because kids like to play anyway, and they're very tactile. And the junk oracle that I have, that's always fun. I'll pull that out and they'll pick something. So there's other, I think, tools that you can use when it comes to the little ones. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of a separate issue from high schoolers.
Well, and you know, honestly, I think that would be just a for fun reading, hopefully. I would hope somebody little didn't really need to know how to deal with their, you know, awful parents and bullying at school, and that would totally freak me out if I was getting that for somebody.
No, totally. Well, and the only reason I read for the little ones is because sometimes I'll be at an adult party and the kids are there, you know, and they're naturally very curious. It's always fun to have the kids because they'll gather around. Oh, what are you doing? And at that age, they're so young and like curious, you know.
Well, it has been, you know, that's the too. You can also put the card down and say, "Oh, what do you see?" You know.
Exactly. Well, I've done that before too.
Have all the junk that we have. Sometimes they get really good insights on stuff.
They do. Well, I think as kids, it's fun. Sometimes I'll pick a card and I'll be like, "Oh, would you like to know? Like, do you want me to tell you something about yourself?" You know, and then I'll like pick a card. Oh, I feel like you would be, you know, good at this, or I see that you are a very loyal person. That's a lovely quality, you know, or whatever. Yeah. So there's ways you can work it.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't have a problem doing cards with kids, you know. It's just, you said you have to filter what you're saying through their language.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, and I feel like it's a case-by-case thing. But yeah, in general, I would not pull the cards out of the deck for older teens. No.
Yes.
Well, we are hitting the end of the show. That was a quick hour. Yes?
What?
All right, so give the viewers your information. How can they get in touch with you?
You can always find me on Facebook at Timothy's Tarot, or if you're in the Dover, Delaware area, I do readings out of Bell Book and Candle. The number is 678-4545.
All right, and I'm your host, Rebecca Brown. You can get in touch with me by emailing the show, thetarotalkshow@gmail.com. Visit the show website, thetarotalk.com, to access all of our archived episodes, including our Blog Talk Radio episodes. Those are always good. So go on over and check that out. Like us on Facebook at The Tarot Talk Show, and tweet us at The Tarot Talk Show. So we are all over the web at this point. And be sure to check out my blog, 365daysoftarot.com, and my other blog, tarotwow.com, which it's been, I think I last posted in March. So I definitely need to get back on there and start writing. So anyways, check it out. There's some fun stuff on there. And we'll see you next Monday, same time, same place. This is the Tarot Talk Show, only on the ParaEncounters Network. So mote it be.
So mote it be.
Old for you, but I remember that, it was like a couple of the more dramatic, theatrical wands that showed up. Five of Wands, I think, was one of them. And then the Eight of Wands Swiftness, which is just out of nowhere. Like, the Eight of Wands is so fast, you don't see it coming, you can't plan for it, you can just kind of hang on for the ride, and the cards that come after it will kind of show you, the nature of what's coming at you, and then how to subsequently deal with it. So, and then the swords, was what I was also getting from that, which is that emotional detachment. Like, you can't be reactive, even though it's going to catch you so off guard out of nowhere. Your first reaction is going to be, Juan's pissed, but you can't be reactive. It's that swords, that mental, okay, let's deal with it, think through it, handle it in a very swords-like, mature, methodical way, I think another thing that had also come up is, for swords, I kind of feel like an abundance of swords in any reading, and it was a short one. It was like just a 3, 4, maybe 5 carder, and half of them were swords. But, my late mentor in tarot, Robert E. Graham, he used to say that swords contain words. And so often when there is an abundance of swords in the reading, it can be words and brutally honest conversation. So things that you don't see coming, words that are very hurtful that you don't see and you have to kind of deal with it. So yeah, I tend to get the swords cards for gossip and arguments and brutally honest conversation, or even news. I know that sometimes the cups cards are like messenger cards and stand for that emotion, but for me, I see swords in the reading as messages, news, words, that kind of thing. So, and it stinks, but with the swords cards, you learn from it, and the illusion's gone. Like, I feel like with the 3 of Swords, it will teach you a lot. Same with the 7 of Swords. Show, only on the ParaEncounters Network. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Yeah, I'm broadcasting from the videos and everything else we've got going there. So, Tim, how was your week?
It was an interesting week. I did
a reading for you, and it kind of things came to pass. So tell people about that.
I did. Oftentimes after the show goes offline, me and Rebecca will throw cards for each other, and we have our little tarot playground time. And she told me I was going to get something out of left field, and I should use intellect to deal with it and not emotion. And I did exactly the opposite thing at first, and then I pulled my head out of my butt and fixed it. But it was very much a 5 of Wands, 5 of Cups kind of. That had nothing to do with me personally. It's just other people's issue. And it's been dealt with, and I got the lesson I was supposed to get out of it, I think. So that's a good thing.
Well, I wish I remember what I pulled. Hills of Northern California, and my co-host Tarot Tim is coming in from Dover, Delaware. Hey, Tim.
Hi, Rebecca. Hey, everybody. Glad y'all joined us.
Yeah, it's good to see you this evening. Thanks for joining me as always. So last week's show was cut short, and that was because producer Eric's dog passed away during the show. So condolences to Eric and to your furry friend. May he journey well.
He has, and thank you very much.
Yeah, good. So, drinking game alert. Anytime either of us says this word, take a sip from your Ace of Cups. Tim doesn't know the word. I know the word, but Tim doesn't. So we'll see. We'll see if I can get you to say it.
Okay.
And you can always follow us on our Facebook page, The Tarot Talk Show. Tweet us at The Tarot Talk Show. And visit our official show website, thetarottalk.com, to catch up on all of our archived shows, guest bios,